In this episode, we attempt to explain where the railroad is actually at. We take a look at some relics that then become decor, as well as try to explain the track plan that we're going to be using while we dive back to 1985 at some vintage footage, and then listen to the curmudgeon's Gripe of the Week. All of this and more in this episode of Sue the Milwaukee Road.
Is there anybody out there? Anybody?
Unfortunately, yes.
See if anybody's out there. It's one of those things. I've been down in this bunker for so long that I don't even know if the sun still exists.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do-do.
This is another episode of Sue the Milwaukee Road. This is going to be the start of the season. We're going to go through 10 episodes, and while we burn through these episodes, we're actually going to do something we haven't done in the past,
Shower, shave, cut your hair.
and that's actually do something on the railroad.
No.
I've showed you snippets, I've showed you bits and pieces, but now we're going to actually dive into looking at the railroad itself and how I go about assembling it, how I go about wiring the DCC, how I go about powering my turnouts, how you go about activating a switch stand. There's all kinds of things that I always want to cover, I always try to cover, and a lot of times I fail to cover. So, it officially makes me a model railroader. Anybody that's out there knows that the list of to-dos is endless.
Amen, brother.
One of the things I need to do, like I end most seasons, I'm going to start this season by cleaning things up. There we have it. All clean. Not bad, right? I suggest that you clean up your railroad every once in a while. Your workspace, like I said, I end an episode, I start an episode, or start a season, whatever it might be. I like to just hit the reset button, make sure everything's all cleared up, and then you dive back into what you're working on. As you can see, some progress has been made. How did I make that progress? Well, we're going to take a look at that as we move through this season, but I do want to take a moment just to look at where everything is at. One of the biggest things is actually the room that we're in. I'm just going to give you a real quick brief overview. We'll pop you off the tripod and let you take a look around.
It's time to test your knowledge on the red and white. On December 3rd, 1985, Sioux Line locomotives 765 and 755 are on train number 911, trundling through the fresh snow at Trout Lake, Michigan. Trout Lake is situated at the east end of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, along trackage that was later operated by the regional carrier of the Wisconsin Central Limited.
Can we just get to the answers?
Sure, the photo and information had nothing to do with the question anyways. Which of these Sioux numbers were not former M&S locomotives? Was it A, 6240, B, 1205, C, 1401, or D, 2003? We'll find out later in this episode.
One of the biggest things in the room is getting it finished off. And what we've got here is 2114 Sioux Line unit. I got a headlight that I set up there just for some display. I had an Aunt Doris that painted this particular painting. I purchased it from the Jack Carr auction that took place, that was last fall. And had the opportunity, since it was Sioux Line, and also she painted it in 1986. So I thought, that's kind of cool. Be a cool piece to be able to put up in the Hiawatha Elevated District. I jokingly refer to this as the Tom Klomoski suite, and the reason for that is Tom's actually one of the ones that motivated me to be able to kind of get this thing wrapped up, finished, and get back to the railroad. We'll be able to take a look at the room itself on display, as I got a ship that my uncle had done, my great uncle that had passed away. It's one of the ships that he built. 953 is a Milwaukee Road GP20 along with the switch lantern, M&S private property, and then that's a caboose marker, which is actually Milwaukee Road as well. That's a DM&IR signal. I don't know if it's a signal control, part of the signal control system. That's what the big box is right in this area. But as we kind of swing across here, that got the room done. This is a Murphy bed. This drops down and it's a bed because this is a guest room. I've got some memorabilia across the bottom. A Chicago Northwestern mile marker.
We don't know that.
The motor on the post there, that was a motor of my grandpa's. It's a Omaha lantern. There's a derail sign. Some autographed baseballs that I've collected over the years.
Touch 'em all.
Zach Parisi's dad, JP Parisi gloves that were signed for my grandpa. Or signed for my dad, I'm not sure which, but it says to Bill, so that can actually apply to all of us.
Dead giveaway.
The Harley Davidson was a small motorcycle kit or model that my great uncle had as well. Of course, the no trespassing. Then we've got a MP15 that's a number board. There's a builder's plate there as well as another lantern. Got another small can, another lantern, some more builder plates. the NCE power cab, which is hooked up to the railroad temporarily, hence the wires that are dangling. Chicago Northwestern SD40-2 ACI plate, and then a tribute to my great uncle Dick that had passed away, but he owned a pure oil gas station which eventually became Union 76, so I did put that here, and it is able to be lit up. I thought that'd be a cool little tribute to put a globe in honor of him. A couple more motors, a camera, and then another mile marker.
We still don't know that.
Alright, MNNSers, do you know which number was not a former MNNS locomotive? You kind of kicked back and said, I think it's D, 2003. You'd be correct. That was actually a former GP40. The SD39, SW1200, and SW1500s were all MNNS units.
Ooh, here's a 10-second tip.
Have you ever looked at the KD number 205 coupler gauge and wondered what's that little button? Well, it actually checks the height of the magnet.
KD does sell different thicknesses of magnets, so get the right one for you.
And then getting up to the railroad itself, as you can see, it's popped through. This is the Minneapolis Seed Company, which I end up finding in some footage of a Bob Rivard film. This will be Cargill.
And I've got to thank Bob again. This is like watching a live blueprint for the area that I modeled in 1986.
By scale, this is darn near 1-to-1. I used a Google Maps aerial photo, scaled it off of a 50-foot air slide, and started building this structure. So that is what we're representing there. The tracks that are going in through the tunnel, if you see the switch that is right here, this is switch 102. Switch 102 is going to be switch 102 on the map here. So there will be one industry that gets fed kind of back in on that side. But as we kind of progress, we're heading south. So Southtown Yard would be that direction. You're looking north kind of towards Minneapolis.
We gathered that much.
And as we work our way across, this is a GP20, and I did do a switch stand there. That is a Lines West switch stand. It is functional. So when I do throw the servo, I'll actually see if I can plug it in here. As you can see, it throws. One of the things I did run into with this process is obviously with the building location, you can see how close it is. I was trying to bring it in a little bit closer. The locomotive does clear the switch stand, but when you throw the turnout, it'll start to swing the car body out and it'll just start to hit the edge of the switch stand. So that one is not going to be a permanent application. I may place it here. Switch stands in general are not a priority, so I'm not going to dive into that just yet. One thing about operations is making sure you have bulletproof track work before you get to that point of doing the super detailing. I'll cover kind of how I did that particular switch stand in a later episode this season. But as we progress along here, this is 35th Avenue. These elevators are just temporarily sitting here. I use them for mocking up to see where stuff is located. We're then turning to what this would be known as Elevator T in the Hiawatha Elevator District. Now there is some selective compression happening here because the yard office normally would be placed a little bit further this direction, but to be able to get everything fitting in here, I've made a few modifications and just slid the building down a bit. This is LS Donaldson Warehouse, which will be on the foreground, just for a place that's going to be able to drop a boxcar. To give you an idea on the elevators, the height, this is a Walthers elevator. That's their factory height. And this is to the scaled height that I was able to determine the heights of these silos. I actually went out and did some field research, being able to look at the actual elevators themselves, and was able to determine the height.
How do you determine that height? Well, you ask the nuts. What do the one nuts say to the other? Geometry. All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Greeno. I remember that joke as well as this formula. It was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I was just going to use a friend's golf rangefinder to be able to determine the height of the elevator. Well, it didn't read that accurately just from the ground right straight up. So I went out 24 feet, I laid on the ground, and I measured up to the top of the silo. That gave me the two measurements I needed, 24 feet, 87 feet, C minus A equals B squared. Well, that was 6,993, which turned out to be 83.6. I rounded it up, 84 feet. That's our silo.
You lost me at geometry.
Of the Walthers, we're going to be too short. So as we continue swinging south here, we are looking at now what would be Hiawatha Lumber. And this one here is going to actually be referred to as Friesman Manufacturing, and that's just a tribute to Gary Friesman, who got us into operations. So somebody that I think the actual name of it was like Fressman or something along those lines, but I'm going to call it Friesman Manufacturing. This location, so this block, would normally actually be down a little bit further, and then the elevators that are there would have normally been here. But due to selective compression and where things were located, I wanted to maximize this corner space. This building is not going to be here. This is just a temporary structure, but it's going to show you that a lumber yard can kind of work in here, which will fit better than the utilization if I had built the elevators like General Mills or one of the elevators that would have been in this place. So as we move ourselves a little bit further south here, give you an idea of the line drawing. This is what I did to be able to give myself an idea of what we're looking at on the railroad itself. And Minneapolis Seed Company, where we started, we've worked our way south. We've taken a look at what I'm referring to as Cargill Elevator, but that's actually Elevator T. And then across the way here, this will be LS Donaldson. So as we looked at Friesman Manufacturing, Hiawatha Lumber, those two would actually kind of get flip-flopped. But then now we're down to 38th Street. And we're looking south, and this would be General Mills, or what was known as Searless Grain Company. And then on the belly track, which is the nearest track to us, is the Atkinson Milling Company, which is still in service today. So as we're looking across here, this crossover that we're looking at here, normally this switch would have swung back and gone towards the elevator T. So that's just to represent it. I want this look to look like it did, actually does. They've removed this crossover, but it kind of gives you the idea of what we're going to be going for. This will be Atkinson. We'll feed Atkinson here, and then this is going to be General Mills. So that brings us to the end of the line and the end of the look at the railroad itself. Hopefully you've got a better idea of kind of what's going on. I am going to dive into how I'm laying the track, how I've built the bench work, and everything that's kind of moving along. So hopefully you enjoyed this particular segment. And we'll dive into more of this at a little bit later date.
Today we're rail fanning with Robert Rivard. Some of us just know him as Bob.
Hey, Bob.
I got to give Bob a huge thanks for this particular footage because this is circa 1986 in my era, Milwaukee Road in the Hiawatha Elevated District. It doesn't get any better than that. Little thing to learn about this particular job, it was also known as the Garden Job. This is an MP15AC, former Milwaukee Road, now Soo Line. The Soo Line never owned any MP15ACs until they acquired the Milwaukee Road. But if you wanted to buy one of these in 1975, you'd only have to shell out $326,198.50.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Hey, not bad. I think I'll get 2.
The Milwaukee Road actually ordered 2 sets of these, 2 sets of 32. There's 32 ordered in 1975 and then 32 ordered in 1976. Let's give a listen if we can hear the crew yelling to Bob. Now as they roll out, we'll roll out too, but not before showing you a few highlights of what's to come. And that won't be the last of the rail fanning we do with Mr. Bob Rivard. We're going to be able to check out a little bit more of the Hiawatha Elevated District, as well as some of the vehicles that happen to be passing through the area.
Ooh, sweet ride.
The shaggin' wagon.
And also an opportunity to listen to that sweet e-bell. We can look forward to vintage footage like this in future episodes of Sue the Milwaukee Road.
Alright, here's the curmudgeon coming at you for the crap of the week. This week it's timeliness. We're talking about being on time for operating sessions or any events that somebody invites you to and says, hey, you should show up at 11 o'clock. And if you show up at 10 o'clock, that's a little bit too early. I'm telling you right now, nobody needs to see their friends sitting in their skivvies because they ain't ready for you to show up yet. That's what we're talking about right now, though, is being on time. And if you're going to be late, don't even show up. Don't even take the invite. I'm telling you right now, just pay attention and be on time. Because if you're not on time, you're late. And that's the curmudgeon's crap of the week. Nobody needs to see their friends sitting in their skivvies.
A A big thanks to everybody that watches to the end, that has hit like, hit subscribe, as well as made comments in the past. It's those actions that help share this content, so if you haven't checked out other episodes, feel free to do so. You can also check out the tour of the GN in 1970, as well as the past episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s.
Nobody needs to see their friends sitting in their skivvies.